Hey guys, how are you doing? Welcome back to the Transformation Journey. My name is Emiliano, and in this episode, I have the pleasure of having a conversation with my friend Mikel Billstrom. So, as many of you already know, Mikel is the creator of Underdog Books. He's also the author of Mom, Listen, and most importantly, I would say that he's a person we can learn many things from. During our conversation, Mikel and I talk about death, we talk about his experiences in his childhood, about his vision for his future, and about many more things from which we can all learn from. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Mikel Billstrom. Just starting right away, could you tell us about yourself and also what you do?
Oh, myself? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm a complicated man, constantly evolving, learning to embrace all my different characteristics or idiosyncrasies, you know what I'm saying? However you say that word. My unique individual
Yeah.
character.
Yeah, I mean, you're like that person in the book community who stands out just for being yourself.
And you know why that is? Because my whole life I was kind of uncomfortable with myself, like low self-esteem, not believing in myself, like afraid to put ideas or opinions out there just because I was afraid to be wrong or like rejected. So it's taken a long time to become comfortable being uncomfortable, So that's been a work in progress, and it's done intentionally. Whenever I feel like there's something really bugging me and I refuse to put it out there, I'm like, you have to put it out there. If it's something like that's truly in your belief system and you think it's right or wrong or whatever the case, or maybe you're just putting it out there to kind of have your thought process like challenged by other people. I think every idea needs to be challenged with other perspectives and other ideas, just so you're not ignorant, And I border on being assertive and ignorant because sometimes I'll have a thought that's just bugging me and it just needs to come out. And then when it comes out, I'm like, was that the right? Am I right or am I completely wrong? And
how do you know when you are right or wrong?
That's a good question.
With yourself.
Right. I think we all have our own lives and our own life experiences that kind of filter everything that we believe. So, if you kind of grew up the way I grew up, I understand that my whole life I was hoping that someone else would save me, or like someone would come along and like be like, "Oh, it's okay. You had a pretty difficult life. Let me do this for you." Or, here's a house, here's a job, here's a let me process your emotions for you, And I realized somewhere along the line that nobody is going to do the work for you, right? No one's going to process your emotions for you. No one's going to like take massive action for you. Nobody's going to like be willing to fail over and over and over if you're not going to do it yourself. No one's going to be like, yeah, let me take your failures for you.
Yeah.
So you have to be your own hero. I learned that kind of the hard way, having like a victim mentality like my whole life, probably till I was like 26. And at some point I'm like, all right, this is not working. I have to like figure this out for myself. I'm the one that has to save myself. I'm the one that caused, most of my problems. And even if like a life experience or a situation in life wasn't caused by me directly, it's still my responsibility to overcome it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of formed my entire identity now, pretty much, because it's the most helpful thing. Like if you think about a belief system, right? why do you want to believe something to help you get through life? And if you want to believe something that has the most leverage or the most scalability, it's able to go with you in every situation, is you, right? The
Mm-hmm.
man in the mirror. I'm here in
Yeah.
this situation, so I have to figure this out. It's nobody else's fault,
Yeah.
right? So it has the most leverage. It's the one thing that does multiple scaling of benefits. I don't need to rely on anybody. Am I going to
Mm.
turn down a helping hand? Probably not. But I'm not going to expect it from anybody because it makes you not weak, but it makes you reliant, makes you sit around and wait. So I've been trying to build and serve underdogs with my Instagram because that's who I care about, right? So I'm in the process of building something meaningful, right? Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean it's like get rich quick.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be service first, and you have to lead kind of by example. So I tend to attract a lot of people that want to speak their mind or they want to put their opinions out there, but they just don't. So they definitely hit me up in my DMs like, man, yeah, I like that. Yeah, you're right. I just can't say that. I'm like, well, technically you could say that, but you're just afraid of that social rejection, you know? So I'm really trying hard to continue to build that because books are always going to be part of my life. And there's so much leverage in reading 300 pages of a man that lived 100 years, you know?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the famous influencers say, or especially Jim Quick, he always says decades into weeks or days, decades to
Mm-hmm.
days, you know what I'm talking about, where he says you
Yeah.
can compress decades into days.
With books.
And,
Yeah, definitely. And
and
whoa, I actually wanted to know what is your story with books because you wrote a book, right?
yeah,
So yeah, what was the story with this one?
with the one I wrote.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So my whole life, my mom's been addicted to drugs, you know, and it caused me to like live on the streets and in crack houses and in the ghetto and live in parks when I was a young kid and live in buses, live in vans, like live everywhere besides a stable home. And at some point, I wanted to reach out to her and like tell her that basically I wanted to kind of coach her through her life, right? I kind of wanted to save her. I wanted to be kind of her hero, right? I've always had this like weird desire to be a hero. Maybe it's kind of in humans somewhere, but more so in people because my dad died when I was 6. But one thing I knew that when he was driving cab, someone jumped in the river trying to commit suicide, and the guy was in a wheelchair. He was paralyzed. So he rolled himself into the river because he wanted to die. And my dad jumped off the bridge and went and swam and pulled him out of the river. So like that's one of the few memories I've always had of my dad. And I've always like wanted to be that guy. But then somewhere along the line, I wanted to write my mom a book because I couldn't ever have a conversation with her without her like disregarding what I'm saying or telling me that my life is just luck and that everything in her life is just bad luck. You know, I just kind of got sick of it. And at the same time, I wanted her to save herself because I realized that I can't be my mom's savior.
Mm-hmm.
She has to do it. So when I started writing the book, it started out as I'm gonna like give her some personal development tips, right? Like Dr. Mike in the house. Here we go. Here's how you overcome life.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't gonna reach her, and it wasn't gonna do me any good because everybody is at their own place in life, and you kind of have to meet them where they are. And the one thing I know that she does, or that she cares about, is me. Right? She sees me as her little boy. So then I started just writing like a journal entry one day. I was just pissed. I was hurt, and I started typing it out, and then I started crying, and I'm like, like what the hell is this? Like, what am I? Why is this making me cry? So I shut the computer. I was like, nah, we're not going to go down that road. And then I deleted it all, and I started writing the book again, telling my mom, you got to take responsibility of your life. You know, you have to set goals, you know, all the same shit that everybody says.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't feeling right. So I deleted that. And then I started typing from somewhere inside myself that was the little boy that was hurt by my mom, you know? She's a good woman, but when she's on drugs and she spends all her money and she's doing bad things, she tends to be abusive, like physically, mentally, you know. Oh, we're on the streets because of you, blah, blah, blah. You know, like you're worthless. You can't do anything right. And as a little kid, you don't know to reject those thoughts or those beliefs. You're just like, oh, okay, I'm worthless. Like that's all the deeper you can think as a 6-year-old or whatever. So I started typing, I started crying again. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna write this. And then I'm gonna get it out of me emotionally. And then I'm gonna sit as a grown man and reflect on it. So then I ended up writing a letter as like my 6-year-old self, like watching my dad go into the ground and like being at the funeral, like just feeling that loss, you know. And then I reflect as an adult, like how it might have affected me. And then I went to like the next phase in my life where there's like a little bit of a memory or emotional part that kind of was clogging me up, you know, something I haven't dealt with. So I wrote that as a letter, like a journal entry, as like a 8-year-old. And then I reflected on that moment in time as a man. And like I just went back and forth, letter to my mom, reflect as man, leather, man, you know, boom, 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 all the way up until my current day. So the book is a series of letters trying to process my emotions. And then after every letter, there's a reflection. And at the end of the day, it's me telling my mom that I can't be her hero, but I can love her, you know, and that love is at its best when things are bad. When things are broken, love shines the most, right? Because anybody can love the perfect person.
Yeah.
You know, like anybody can love the person that builds you up and like loves you and never makes a mistake and is always there for you. That's easy. But when love truly shines is when the person abused you when they're at their lowest. They knew they love you, but they didn't treat you like it. They didn't, you know, make you feel like you're loved. They're imperfect. They were selfish when they should have been taking care of their kids. You know, they neglected their kids. If love can shine through that darkness instead of resentment, or like you set me up for a shitty life, and it's my parents' fault that, you know, I went to jail or whatever. You know, it's just love's the best when things are at their worst. So it was an interesting experience writing the book because I barely graduated high school. I'm the guy that shouldn't be writing a book, you know?
Yeah. Did you go to university?
I went to here in the States, we have a thing called a junior college.
Oh,
like for freshmen and sophomores, and anybody can go, but a lot of athletes go that have bad grades. So I went and played football for a couple of years, and it's the only college I could get into, so I just went.
Yeah, well, and actually, I think that was a self-help book for you, right? Not specifically for the person who reads it. And as you say, because you are your own hero.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the book was truly like therapy for me, for myself, you know, like just letting it out there. Just Let the fingers take control. Whatever comes out, it comes out. And then the only reason I put it out there into the world is because I made a promise at some point in my life, either to myself or to God or whatever, that every hard thing that I went through, I was going to make sure it was used for good. So that's the only reason I put it out there. You know, it wasn't to get rich or to embarrass myself or my mom. You know, none of that. I'm just like, if someone has gone through what I've gone through and they're at a low spot and they happen to stumble across the book, it might help them understand the process it takes to, you know, overcome the odds that you were given.
Mhm. And for this point in your life, when you wrote the book, had you started to read books already, or yeah?
Yeah, at that point I was probably reading books for 8 to 10 years. Yep. So, and you know, that's the growth mindset is what helped me do that. It's like being okay with being imperfect and just trying to write a book, even if it's just self-published and sold on Amazon. You know, it's still your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings, and if you're doing it for the right reasons, which is to provide value in some way, you can't really go wrong. Even if it's shitty, because you're going to learn something, right? And it's going to serve a purpose in some way. So
Yeah. And besides from these experiences you're talking about, which sound tough, which books do you think have helped you also overcome them?
I think the number one book that I keep coming back to, and I've already told you this. If people know me, they already know that I talk about it. But it's a book by a doctor, psychologist Nathaniel Branden, and it's The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. It's a
I
boring book. It's real boring. But if you digest it and take it in, and you have any insecurities or like self-esteem issues or self-doubt or anything, right? Maybe you're shy. Maybe self-esteem is like your immune system. It literally adjusts to every environment. Like it gets you through the hard part, right? The self-esteem allows you to do things you're not good at until you become good at them, right? So self-esteem is the baseline before confidence, right? Because if you want to develop confidence, you have to be competent at something. And in order for that to happen, you have to be willing to just like look like a dumbass over and over and over. And some people might consider that a failure in the moment, but self-esteem just allows you to keep chugging along, right? Keep negotiating. One thing I had a real hard time with is like, if I would have a job, I would just take whatever pay they'd give me, because I was just, you know, I felt like, oh, I don't even deserve this job. I'm just glad they'll pay me anything. But then at some point, after reading that book, I negotiate every salary, no matter what. Even if it's more than I expected, I'm like, we're gonna have to talk about those numbers.
Yeah, so like when that happens, what do you do? Do you negotiate to bring them up or bring them down?
Bring them
Yeah.
up, or you know, it's not always monetary either, right? Like, not that I want to work a job, but if I'm going to work a job, I want to kind of have my own terms. And it might be, instead of an extra 10 grand a year, maybe I just want an extra 6 days of paid vacation, or I don't want to pay for my healthcare. I want you to pay for my healthcare. You know, it can be anything.
Yeah.
But you can't start negotiating before they say, you're the one we want for the job. Out of all the applicants, you're the one. And then as soon as they tell you that, then you can negotiate. But you don't have any leverage until they say, you're the one we want.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. And what books would you recommend for negotiation?
Negotiation. Well, the 6 pillars of self-esteem, because one of the pillars One of the
Yeah.
pillars is about being assertive,
Hmm.
uh, but Never Split the Difference is a great book. Grant Cardone has a book called Sell or Be Sold, which is just a kind of like an overview of just a mindset. But Never Split the Difference is probably the best book I've read on negotiating.
Okay.
You read that?
No, no, I really have been reading for like maybe 2 years and a half now. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, so again, all lives are different, right? But
right,
I have always been like a good student, if you could call it like that. Now
right.
I'm not that focused on school as I probably was or would have been without books. But again, yeah. So I changed from the school I was to the school I am in now, and here I started reading. I read Elon Musk's biography, and then I just got caught into reading good books and biographies and self-help, and then my page, and then the interviews.
Yeah,
But yeah, so no, I haven't read Never Split the Difference.
yeah. Well, man, I don't think I didn't read my first book until I was like 23, 24 maybe. I was a late bloomer. The last thing on earth I wanted to do was read books. But I just stumbled across one and I read it and things started getting better. So I was like, I'm going to keep doing that.
Yeah. And which was that book?
The first book I ever read was called The Best Damn Salesperson Ever.
Is it like that? Because I think there's a book. I don't know. I think it's The Greatest Salesman or something. So
Oh,
isn't
that's
isn't.
Magdino. But the one I read was called The Best Damn Sales Book Ever.
And would you suggest this one for negotiation too?
No, I would suggest that one for just for a rookie salesperson or a person that has never set goals in their life with their
Hmm.
career or anything, right? So I was a sales guy and I had no self-esteem, no confidence. That makes for a horrible salesperson, you know?
Yeah.
And I didn't believe in myself, but I had a friend kind of push me. Come on, just go do sales. You'll be good at it. And I was like, she was definitely wrong, but maybe she knew that I was stubborn enough that eventually I'd become good. And when I read this book for the first time in my life, I had a man saying, Mike, you're good enough. You can do it. You just have to take small steps, set goals, have a short term goal, long term goal, and be okay failing. Just keep getting better. Just keep getting better. And then as I was reading that, I'm not used to hearing those kind of things. So it's just like, man, this guy's making me feel really good about myself. Which is that's short term, right? But sometimes it's the fuel you need to finally have someone tell you you're good enough. You know,
Mhm. Yeah. To then
it,
keep going, right?
yeah. And I bought a book and a book and a book, and then the second time I went to jail, I brought books in.
And I mean, would you mind talking about why you went to jail?
Yeah, I went to jail because I got charged with felony assault, in the United States. Third degree assault is a felony, and it requires jail time. So I went for 180 days, but then I got out at like 120 with good behavior. Um, and it was just for a fight at a bar over a girl. And the only thing that I was good at was fighting. I was good at sports, I was good at fighting, and I was good at making an ass of myself. So it worked out perfectly.
Yeah. And the second time?
The second time was I didn't pay my fines. So I had to go back for 2 weeks as like a
Mm.
penalty, which sucked because I just got my job.
So
I,
by then, when you got your job, you didn't pay, and because of that, you went to jail.
right, because I just started my job like a couple weeks ago. And then I got a paper saying, "Oh, you have to go back to jail because you didn't pay."
Oh.
So it was called a probation violation.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
but the second time I brought books in with me because I'm like, I'm going to use this time to get better. So I
yeah.
brought like a sales book and a personal training book and like different things to make sure that those 2 weeks were used to improve myself.
And did you learn any like transformative lesson from jail besides from whatever you read?
From besides what I read from
Yeah.
jail, what it taught me is that people will walk on you if you let them, not only in jail but in life. You know, that's why one of my rules is like, no matter how little or how outmatched you are, if there's someone that's trying to bully you, it is much better to stand up to them and get your ass kicked than it is to let them just tell you where to go or how to be or what they expect from you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to be assertive. And we admire that. Even like if we watch a video and we see a small kid sticking up to a bully where he knows for sure that this bully could kick his ass, there's still something to admire about that, right?
Yeah.
It's like standing up straight with your shoulders back, Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
This is the bully, right? And I have a choice that I can retreat or I can tell this bully that if you're going to treat me a certain way, I'm going to draw a line in the sand right here and you're going to have to kick my ass.
Yeah. Instead of letting
There's
him,
no
right?
question.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Instead of just like allowing him to just treat you like shit over and over and over, you have to let him know that there's going to be a fight.
Mm-hmm. And those are like little steps upon, well, yeah, confidence, right? And I forgot a word. Self-esteem.
Self-esteem.
Because yeah, exactly. And well, with this conversation, I noticed the part of personal development which you like more. I am guessing it is like maybe either biographies about like people who went through tough situations. I don't know. It comes to mind David
Yeah.
Goggins, and also things which give negative, negative stuff and situations better perspective, right?
Right. Like I love an underdog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or someone that drew a line in the sand that says, here's the line, and I'm willing to die for this belief right here. Right? Martin Luther King,
Mm-hmm.
Gandhi, like all these great figures of history. Because
Exactly.
like Martin Luther King knew at some point he was going to probably die,
Mm-hmm.
but he knew what was right. He says, you're going to have to kill me. Period.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah,
I admire.
actually. Oh, well, now that we're saying this, it comes to mind one quote from a Mexican historic person, Emiliano Zapata. Maybe he's, yeah, Emiliano. Maybe he's known in other places, but he has a quote which says that something like, "You should rather die standing than live, in your knees." So I think it has to do with all of this.
Right. Like even when there's a reason that there's something that we admire about the person that's like, I'm going to sacrifice myself for these three guys behind me, or I'm going to sacrifice myself even for like a dog burning in a building.
Mm-hmm.
Not the smartest thing, but still there's something about that we're like, wow, like we admire that. And like in Christ, right? The ultimate sacrificial story. Like these archetypes, there's something about that we look up to. Like the warrior that's willing to die on the hill versus retreat. Even though he's 100% certain he's going to die. And logically it doesn't make it doesn't make sense. Like that's not a good idea. But at the
Yeah.
same time, we look up to that. There's something in the human spirit that you just can't deny it. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the spirit of the underdog, you know, like the one that has all the chips against him, but just keep swinging, you know. This is your hand. That's all you have. This is your hand in life. You have to play it, right? You can't
Hmm.
fold. You have to play it. It's your one hand. You can't just go around complaining all the time that my life is so bad and this person's trying to hold me down and that person. What if they are trying to hold you down? It's still your responsibility to overcome or to go
Hmm.
down swinging, you know? It does
Yeah.
no good to blame other people for your life.
Exactly. Have you read Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art?
The subtle art, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because actually, in that book, he says that responsibility isn't about having the fault for something, but knowing how to respond upon life situations, right? Even if they are not directly your fault.
Right. Yeah. The subtle art.
Yeah, that's a good book.
Yeah. One thing that always sticks in my head from that book is that when he's talking about like the old man that doesn't want to go to work, like how things used to be simple, right? Like we used to just, when life was a lot harder, like you didn't search for a job for, a year. You would wake up in the morning and be like, oh man, I feel like shit. I don't want to go to work, but who gives a fuck? I'm going to go anyways.
But wait, what was this lesson you talk about from the book?
in,
Because
in the subtle art, he talks about like how things used to be more difficult and people would just deal with them.
oh yeah,
Right.
and now and yeah, I think I get you, and I think that's partly because of social media and yeah, well, internet influence, right? About
Mhm.
making all things seem perfect
Right.
and not giving the dark side. But
Right.
but again, that's something you do in the books community, and that's something I appreciate.
Yeah. I have a hard time. I feel like a punk if I'm not willing to be myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're not willing to be yourself, are you building the right business?
Mm-hmm.
If you have to tiptoe around, because let's just say you build up this great business, right? Built on like the person that's not you, only the good parts of you. And then you get one recorded conversation from a friend or whatever where you're actually being yourself and that goes onto the internet,
Mm-hmm.
it'll destroy your brand. So for like me, if I'm a loose cannon all the time, what are you gonna call me out on? Like, man, Mike's an asshole. Yeah, I've been an asshole a long time in
Mm-hmm.
multiple situations, you know? Or like, oh, Mike cusses sometimes. Did you know that? Like, yeah. Like, what are you gonna catch me on? You can't catch me on anything besides being myself. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're still around, you probably don't mind it that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you actually start to build a following with that, right? With of people who want to show who they are but don't do that.
Yeah.
And I remember that some months ago, actually maybe like half a year now, you were like having this problem. I don't know if you even consider it a problem, but it was that you were like losing followers. And do you think that? Well, yeah. Why do you think that happened?
Oh, I lose followers all the time.
No, yeah, I mean, me too. But do you said like you lost, I don't know, 200 followers or something.
Oh
Do you
yeah.
think that was because of being you or something? Because if it was, then it shouldn't be a problem since you're comfortable by being yourself, right?
Right. I think what happened in that situation, I kind of went probably to the extreme. You know, like and my wife tells me this all the time. Like you can present the same situation in a nicer way.
Hmm.
But sometimes I don't have time for that. Sometimes I'm like, we have to get this shit together, and you guys are all pussies. So, see you later.
Yeah, then that happens. That happens many times. And well, so as I said, I've been in the personal development world for like 2 years now, or something. And now I consider myself a much more like confident person. Um, but again, that was because of showing who I really am, and showing that maybe most teens don't like reading, but I do, and most teens don't like having conversations like this, and but I do, and I have actually with this started to build like better relationships with real friends. I think that has to do with what many people say of your network getting smaller, but the net worth of it getting bigger, right?
Yeah, getting better. Like your net worth is in your network, and you are who you hang out with, right?
Mm-hmm.
People that think the same are naturally just attracted to each other, and they give each other energy. Like when I
Yeah.
hang around people that aren't like me, it's draining, right? Because they're like, oh, well, it's this person's fault. I'm like, no, it's not. It's your fault.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this person needs to do this for me. Like, no, they don't. You need to do it for yourself, right? Or they're like, it just gets draining because you're constantly coaching people and they don't want to be coached. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just so outside what I believe that I'm just like, I can't say something. Like you're literally blaming everybody else for your life and you're the only one living your life. So you have to do the work and you should probably shut up about other people.
Yeah, you should be your own hero, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And again, well, I was having this conversation some months ago with Darren Weeks, who is a rich dad advisor and stuff. But I asked him how could I get my family and friends more into personal finances, and what he told me was not to get them in. So Mm, yeah, even though sometimes maybe one would like to invite people to read and all that stuff, as the story you tell about your mom. So in those situations, do you tell what you think and actually coach that person, or do you just keep it to
Well,
yourself?
it's hard, right? Because
Yeah,
if the student's not ready,
yeah.
you're casting pearls at swine. It's not going to do any good. But I have a story where I wasn't ready at the time. The teacher taught me something, but it took 14 years later. So, so in my childhood, my mom disappeared for a couple weeks and left us with some creepy dude. So me and my brother left and we were homeless, just wandering around. And we ended up hanging out with this old homeless guy in the woods. And he was appreciative of us because me and my brother were small enough to get into the dumpster because it was locked. Okay. Because there's a lot of homeless people around this place. But we were small enough where I could put my brother in the hole and he'd like we get the food that just expired,
Mm-hmm.
this morning or whatever. So it's still good, but legally they have to get rid of it. So we'd bring it back to the fire and he'd like, oh yeah, good job, man. Good job. So we'd feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then one day they completely sealed it up. And I came back with no food. And I told the guy, like, I can't do it. He's like, can't do what? So I can't get any of the food out of the dumpster. They locked it, you know, and told him it just wasn't gonna happen. And then out of nowhere, kind of got quiet. I thought he just moved on. He said, don't you ever say that. And he seemed angry. I was like, what do you mean? Well, say what? He's like, don't you ever say you can't do it. And I said, okay. I'm like 10 years old, so I'm like freaked out because this old man's like screaming at me basically.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you know why I don't have a home? I said, because you don't have a house or a place to live? I'm 10, simple minded, right?
Yeah.
He's like, no, I don't have a home because I picked drugs and alcohol over my businesses and my wife. And as soon as I'm done feeling sorry for myself, I'll get them all back. As a 10-year-old, I didn't hear anything besides his angry tone. So I told my little brother, I said, we got to get out of here. We left. ended up meeting up with my mom actually, like that same day, I think, later that night. She came back and happened to be walking down the same street that we were walking down. It was really like basically luck.
Mhm.
And so 10 years old, right? So I was 23 or 24. And the night before, I found out I was going to go back to jail. I was thinking about killing myself. I was standing on the train tracks, waiting for a train to hit me. But for some reason, I stepped off. And then I went to work the next day thinking that I would quit so that they can't fire me. Right? If you quit before you get fired, it might look better on
Yeah.
your next resume or whatever. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. But then I was such a coward, I couldn't even quit. And then I was driving home that night, pissed off at myself because I can't even kill myself. I'm scared. I can't quit because I'm afraid to have a hard conversation. I know that I'm going to get fired because I suck at sales. And then on my way home, I'm driving. And then I just hear a random voice in my head. Don't ever say that. And I'm like, that's weird. I haven't thought about that guy ever again, even for a second. As long as you keep getting better, you can do anything you want. You know, the guy just kept in my head. I'm like, man, this is really weird. I try to ignore it, right? But then I would drive by a bookstore. I'm like, well, how do you get better at sales if you don't have any confidence? I don't know. Let me walk in this bookstore once. And the only reason I picked that book is because it was in the sales section. And there's a TV show, a sports show called The Best Damn Short Sports Show Ever. So the book was titled almost the same thing. I was like, okay, I'll get this one. And then I went home and I called in sick the next day, played hooky, and I just read the whole book, wrote down all my goals. And then I actually got another book within that next couple of days, read that one, went back to work, apologized for skipping work, whatever. They forgave me. Started getting better and better at sales. I had to go back to jail one more time in between there. But when I told them, they're like, you have a job when you come back, just go do whatever you got to do and then come back and, we'll keep you on. So first of all, I felt like a tremendous amount of gratitude, like, thank you, and then I just kept getting better and better and better. And I became one of the best salespeople, not just in that individual business, but their whole organization, and started building a little confidence, and my life has never been the same. And if it wasn't for that guy yelling at me when I was 10 years old, I might have never picked up a book.
Yeah.
So it's like the student wasn't ready, but 13 or 14 years later, he was ready. So just keep exposing your friends to the right stuff, and the rest is on them. I mean, all you can do is give them the invitation and maybe be the spark that lights their fire, but you can't hold yourself accountable or feel like a failure if you can't get your friends reading or your family members reading. It's completely up to them. They have to want to do it. That's why a lot of times when I give away books, people don't read them, because it wasn't their choice. It was like, here's a book. I think this would be good for you. Okay, I'll read it. 2 weeks later, hi, how do you like the book? Oh, I forgot. I didn't start. All the time, right?
Yeah. And actually that doesn't happen just with books. It happens, I mean, with everything, with education, with well, when right now it just comes to mind the education, but I mean school and books and also tips, but yeah, and if it wasn't for that guy, we wouldn't have this conversation.
Right. Yeah. Just weird, right?
Yeah.
Life's weird. It's really weird, and it's like unpredictable, and you think you have a plan. The universe is like, nah, you're going in the wrong direction, kid. Let me mess this up for you.
And even if yeah, well, you can have a plan, but it might not turn out as you want it to turn out. Do you have a vision for like your future right now, like
Yeah.
a clear vision?
Oh, for sure.
And what is it?
Real clear. So at some point, I want to have an Underdog Coffee and Books in every big city.
Yeah, actually, sorry for interrupting, but and that's actually kind of my vision too with my page, because you know the read alone show, yeah, library and coffee and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there were so many times where I was struggling in life and I had just barely enough to get a cup of coffee and read a book. I didn't buy the book. I just read it in the store, sipping my coffee. But those moments are the ones that kept me going. Like when you feel like giving up, you have no money, you have no friends or family to help you, but you have a book and you have a cup of coffee, hopefully, and you have hope.
Mhm.
I want to bring that all over the world. But Underdog Coffee and Books is going to be coffee and personal development books, biographies, all the stuff that really gets your juices flowing. And at some point, once those are profitable, I want to use it to fund like small homeless shelters. But the homeless shelters don't just accept anybody, right? Not just anybody.
Mhm.
If you want to come in here, you have to contribute to the shelter with chores or whatever the case is. And you also have to take responsibility for your life, because it might not even be your fault that you're homeless right now, but it's definitely your responsibility to overcome whatever life dealt you. So if we can agree on that, you can come on in and we'll get to work, right? Maybe see a therapist, maybe personal development courses in there, and then it'll start like levels of life. So when you first get in, it's just gonna be a cot, place to sleep, a little bit of food. If you start contributing to the shelter, maybe you move up to the next. Now you have maybe a private room, but that's it, just a room and a cot. And then you contribute, and now you graduate through your courses, and then you reach back and you help someone else that just came into the shelter, and you start providing value to people that were in the same situation as you. Now maybe you get to the next room where it has a closet and a TV for yourself, and then it works its way all the way up to the suite where they might have like a jacuzzi, a bed, just like real life, like levels.
Yeah.
As much value as you put into the shelter and to other people, you get rewarded, because that's how it happens in real life.
Mhm. Yeah, it's giving to then receive. I like
Right.
it. Well, and that's a great vision actually. And
Yeah.
so that's how old are you right now?
38.
Well, I mean, you're still pretty young, because then with I don't know. I think, for example, my grandpa is 80 years old right now, and
Yeah.
he thought he would live until 60, and so
Right.
he will probably live like until, I don't know. I hope until 100 years old, and
Yeah.
that makes me think, if climate change doesn't kill us first, until when are we gonna live, right?
Right. With all the technology too, and
Yeah.
just taking care of yourself, you know, if I just make it happen by 40, I might have 40 good years of just like building this thing out. And just, I never want to retire. How
Mhm.
lame is that? Like, oh, I'll go retire now. Dude, humans need purpose.
Exactly.
So I can just build that thing out until they throw dirt on me. My life will be a success.
What's your definition of success right now?
I think it's first of all, it's being a good person. What I mean by that is like looking in the mirror and being honest with yourself. I think if you're constantly striving to be honest with yourself, that's successful at the base level, right? And then once you look in the mirror long enough, you have to start listening to that nudge that's in your heart, like those callings that won't leave you alone. The little,
Mhm.
like if I didn't write that little book, it would still be bugging me to this day. because it's just like a little tug. Write the book, write the book, write the book. You try to ignore it, right? Video games are like job, normal life, Netflix, but it's still there. Write the book, write the book,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's being a good person compared to like what you can be, right? The man in the mirror, man or woman in the mirror. And then it's finding a way to give meaning to your life as far as like paying it back to other people in whatever way you can.
Yeah, so your definition of success is more like, yeah, with levels, right? First yourself, and from that serve others and have purpose and start building.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your perspective on that? I mean, like, for
That,
example, I have heard Nick from Book Thinkers that he says that it brings him peace, or and that's sort of what I get. Yeah, and that's sort of the message that I get from him. So, what's your perspective on that?
death. So one thing we all have in common at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps to know that everyone's going to go through it, unless they figure something out. But at this point, our time is limited here. As far as death, it's a double-edged sword, because if you get to death, and then your consciousness, if your consciousness lives for one more second, even, or it goes to somewhere where time doesn't exist, and you have to meet the person that you could have been, and you have to look at that person and admire that person and realize that that could have been you, but you're too much of a coward, or you're too lazy, or you looked in the mirror and you didn't take responsibility for the little nudges that are kind of guiding you through life. I think that would be hell.
Mm-hmm.
Is like to meet your potential and to know that you didn't go after it.
Yeah.
But death, I'm a very deep thinker, so I'm like, I'm not sure.
I like it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm not sure what death is like. But if our consciousness gets to live on, and like this is like Earth is like the battleground to figure out how to use your consciousness for good or bad, like the choice is yours, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Or some people say we live in a simulation theory. You have to ask those people, okay, what are simulations used for? Are they used to make people worse? No, a pilot never goes into a simulator hoping to become worse at flying a plane. So whoever or whatever created the simulation, you have to understand that the simulation's here for something, And if we're just here for entertainment, we're probably doing a pretty good job, because we're like a bunch of apes screaming at each other.
Yeah, pretty good movie.
Yeah.
Actually, there's this guy here in Mexico. He is very deep too, and on a podcast of his, I heard a reflection he had, which said that living is a lonely action, a lonely situation, because you are just with yourself actually, and that's the part which makes you do things and regret things, and also in the consciousness part, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, with this, what I think, well, actually, I have a question here, just a brief pause to this lesson I learned. So when, well, are you religious? Because if not, it won't make sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Christian, so I believe
Oh,
in the
okay.
I believe in the archetype of like sacrificial love.
Hmm.
You know?
Okay, yeah. So then, when you have trouble, do you pray and then hope things get better, or pray but you act and hope things also help you, or
Right.
what's your approach
So
there?
when I pray, I almost always pray for others. And then if I pray for myself, it's never like, oh, help me out of this situation. It's give me a little guidance how I can handle this. Or it's just reaffirming, like there has to be a lesson in this help me learn the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't pray for favors. I'm not asking for favors, right? Because if God put me here, here it is. Now, it's up to me. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's not up to me, and if I'm going off course, then maybe he or God just intervenes and says, "Hey, dumbass, get back to your mission." That little nudge that won't leave you alone. I put it there for a reason.
And again, that's the part of the reflection and that where
Mm-hmm.
your consciousness meets your potential self, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like it. And so that's the purpose you give personal development, to be that better self.
Yeah, I have to figure out how to reach my potential, and especially if there's a course that I want to take that's similar to someone else, and they wrote a book, I should probably read that.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they already had the path, you might as well try to
Mm-hmm.
follow that path. If it works, why not?
Yeah, and that's guidance too, right?
Yeah. It's like mentors from the grave, right? You can, like Andrew Carnegie, the subject of Think and Grow Rich.
Mm-hmm.
He was he was an underdog to begin with, but he learned hard work. He got greedy at some points, and then he reflected and he tried to make it all better. He like tried to make up for his greediness, because he got really rich off making cannonballs and cannons and like things that create war, you know. So at the end of his life, he dedicated his entire all his money, all his energy to like trying to bring world peace. He thought that he could buy world peace. Like, it's, it's a good attempt, but it's not, it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
There's humans involved. But in the States and in other areas, there's a lot of Carnegie libraries, Carnegie Hall. Like people just take this name for granted, like, Carnegie Mellon University. Like these are all funded by this guy's money, because he didn't want to just give out money to people. He wanted to give them the tools to create whatever they wanted to create, but he wasn't going to do it for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he believed in books, because if people have books and the knowledge, he did his part, and the rest is up to him. The rest is up to the person that has read the book, you know?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And
Yeah.
well, just to end, how do you apply books?
How do I apply books? So the way I apply books, well, I apply them daily just to like constantly be feeding my brain something that hopefully internalizes and then becomes action at some point if it's useful, But most of the time, I'll read something. If I learn it and I don't need it right now, I just kind of put it in the back of my mind or whatever, and then use it just in time, So like, I'll have a lot of books specifically on marketing specific industry. And I'll read them because I want to understand the macro lessons within those books on marketing in general. But then I'll go back to those books just in time to actually market into that niche. Or if I'm going to do something, I'll go buy the top 5 books on that particular thing that I'm trying to do, and I'll learn that just in time to execute it. So I use them in all ways. I use them on a daily basis, and I use them basically like Elon Musk, right? He says, someone asked him, how are you going to build, how are you going to build rockets? You don't know anything about astrophysics. He's like, but I can read, so I'm going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I look at it. Like, if there's a problem, someone's already been through it.
Mm-hmm. And he's probably written a book. Yeah, I like it. Well, so, I mean, really deep and interesting conversation. And is there anything else you would like to add?
Just keep reading, keep providing value, and just don't stop, because you don't know what your constant growth, with your Instagram and your podcast, you don't know what it can turn into. You might have big goals, but it might turn into something twice as big as what your goals are. You just don't know. So if it's something if it's something you can see yourself doing forever, it's like having conversations with like minds, keep doing it. Don't stop. Try to use it for good.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
And people can follow me at Underdog.
Yeah. Okay. I will add that part. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Perfect.
Well.
Hey, it was great talking to you with you. Let's do it again.